Today I wanted to talk about generics, and really I wanted to try and go through with you what generics are and how they can be useful. So I have here a, a class called hello numbers, and what it does is it takes in an integer and then prints out hello numbers and the integer value. Um, and what we want to do here is just run that. So I have some extra code here that I'll show you in a minute. So we'll just comment that out, and then you can see how that runs. So it takes an integer, and then it in the main method, it'll take a number and then print it out. So if I run this at the moment, what we'll get is hello numbers 1. And say now that's fine for the class, but say now I wanted to take in doubles. So if I did the same with hello numbers and I tried to say, okay, if I copied that and I try to say let's try and just to show you what would happen as you're expecting. Oh, sorry, expecting you'd see. So let's copy that. And if I passed in say 1.5, you'll get an error saying that it's undefined, because the constructor is taking an integer, but what we're passing in is a double. So that won't work. And what we'll do here then is, let me just save that again. So alternatively, what we can do is we can make another class called hello doubles, and we take in double, and then we print out hello doubles. So if I now remove the comment and save and then run that, we'll get now hello numbers 1 and hello doubles 1.5. And if I want to print a string out, then you can duplicate the class again and then send out pass in a string. But it's not very elegant. So we're duplicating the class really, and what we want to do is we want to keep the same functionality, but we just want to change the type. And this is where generics comes in. So we'll take it. We'll now this is the use and the ease that the generics gives us is how we can have a generic class that will take in any type, and the functionality then will be the same, and it can take any type. And obviously when we're calling methods, we would be calling methods that are available on that type, and we'll get into that a bit more in detail. But this is where generics comes into it and why it is actually called a generic. So we have a generic class, a class that is working for many different types, and it'll take in a type. It'll take in an integer, it'll take in a double, it can even take in other types as well, and the functionality is the same. It doesn't need to change, it doesn't need to be copied into many different classes that are just copying the functionality and then adding a new type. And we'll now get to that point where we'll now create a generic class. Here we are, and to make a generic class, first of all, let's just copy this class here, hello numbers, and we'll make a new class. Call that generic hello. Okay, and so the way to make this a generic class is to add angle brackets and T here. It's a convention, but you can have anything else here. And then instead of having the type specified, we can keep it as T instead of integer. And then we can then output the value of T here. And then when we instantiate it, we can have the value generic hello here, and then we can change this. So in this case here, we'd have to call it by using the word, using the type integer. And in this case, instead of having hello doubles, we can have generic hello double. And we pass in the double. So here we're saying, just correct that. Hello. And the convention is to have the empty brackets there. So let's see now, what have we done? So we define, what we do is we specify this generic type T, and this is then used to pass into the constructor, and it's assigned here as the member variable. And then we print out the value here. So instead of putting hello numbers, let's change that to be generic hello, space, and then we print out the value of the number. Now you can see here, now we have the static here, it's just a main. I'm calling generic hello twice, one with integer and one with double. So, and we pass in an integer and we pass in a double. So let's see how this runs now. And there you are. So with a very simple change to the class, we now have one class that does the same job as these two different classes. We had hello numbers, we had hello doubles. One took just integers and the other took doubles. Initially, you remember, we had to instantiate two separate classes with their own, which were effectively a copy of each other, just to be able to pass in the two separate types. But now with generic hello, it's just using the same class. And we can then just pass in the different types there. So this is a very simple example, and we'll go on to a more complicated one in a few moments. But just to recap here as to what we've done, as I said, with this generic class now, we're able now to remove the requirement to have two separate classes to take two different types. Instead, we just have one, and we specify the actual type we're going to be using for the generic class at the time of instantiating the class itself. All this is well and good, and let's look at a bit more advanced, shall we say, use of the generics. So in this case here, we are taking one type as the in the definition of the constructor for the class. But we could improve this. We could take two, we could take three if we wanted to, and then we can also use those values in a generic way as well. And the way to do that is to simply add another value here, and you could add more if you wanted to. And when you define it here, you'll see here then that straight away you get the errors now, because now it's expecting 2 types. But let's just update the code of the class itself with the corresponding new code that is required. Start j is equal to j. And if you want to print out, you can print out both as well. System out.println generic hello 2 plus j. And here now, instead of having 2 classes, now we can use it all as one. We just pass in the double, and we pass in the value here. And what is the error now? Println. Okay. Hello, what's the problem here? So we're taking generic hello double, and what's the saying here? Cannot infer arguments for generic hello. Generic hello vj. What is the problem here? Should there. Oh, that's funny. There you go. So that worked in the end. There was some issue with the user interface there. So now you can see that it's taking an integer and double as the types to the generic class, and we expect to have 2 messages outputting the type, the value of the variables of the constants we're passing in. So let's run that, and sure enough, there you go. So instead of having two instances of the same class, now we can combine it into one class. And you can see here that the use is very, very convenient, and it helps us now to be able to really have these classes defined in a generic way, and we can define the types as and when. So I can have another class here defined if I wanted to. Just for argument's sake, let's do generic hello, and what shall we take? A string, comma, integer, and po2 hello. Two dot, and we run that, and we get the corresponding output. Now, if you're quite familiar with the Java language, you can see the parallels here between this and the hash map class, where you have your key and the value in the map. And you can see here it's a very similar usage here as well. So that's another very good use of the generic class, using the various generic types here, T and V, and then we can mix and match with the values. And Let's see if I change this to be a double, you'd get your error straight away because it doesn't match the integer value. So again, you have your compile time validation going on there as well. And it's good to note that, let's say I try to do something like this, and you'll straight away get an integer. You can't have a primitive as a generic type. It has to be an object, a class that has object as the parent. Well, that's really, I think that's a good little tutorial for you, and I can cover some more details on this in another video. But I hope you enjoyed our little tutorial on generic classes. Thank you very much. Bye.